Hi there, and welcome to this video on GCSE Biology for the AQA Specification, focusing on the human nervous system, and in particular on the eye. I'm Shumina from StudyMind, where we help you revise GCSE Biology with our helpful video tutorials, tailored to your subject, your specification, and to you. If you're new here, make sure you click the subscribe button. Whilst you are watching, please leave any comments below if you're unsure about anything, and let us know if it's your first time watching our videos so we can send you our free revision materials. We also have helpful timestamps below for each part of the video to help guide you through the specification. So let's get started.
Hi everyone, and welcome to tutorial 3 of 4 on the human nervous system, in which we'll be looking at the eye. So, in our previous session we had a look at the role and structure of the brain and how these structures involve different functions in the body. And we're going to extend that to the eye. So we're going to look at the structure of the eye, how this relates to the functions of the various components of the eye. We're also going to look at this concept called accommodation, which will make more sense later on in this tutorial. And then finally we'll look at more clinical aspects related to the eye. So, what is the eye? Well, the eye works with the brain to coordinate what we see. And so it's a sensory organ, so it contains receptors that are sensitive to light intensity and colour. So therefore it detects a stimulus and transmits information to the brain, where a response is then initiated via effectors. So let's take a look into the key functions of the eye. So first off, the eye is responsible for refracting light, because we have to make light rays converge together onto one point on the retina in order to form an image. So when light rays enter the eye, they are far apart and they need to be bent. So another word for saying bent is refracted, because they're passing from air into a different medium. So they're passing from air into the liquid kind of structure of the eye. So they're going to bend as they pass through that. They're going to undergo refraction, and therefore they're going to converge towards each other, these light rays, onto one point on the retina. And it's the lens that is responsible for this refraction of light. So a second key function of the eye is responding to light intensity by changing the pupil size. So the higher the light intensity, the less light we need to take into our eyes. So the size of the pupil can therefore get smaller. And also the eye is really, really important for maintenance and protection. So these are the three key functions of the eye. So now we're going to come on to the various components. So here, this part of the eye over here, so this bit here, is your retina. So this kind of lines the back of your eyeball, and it contains all of the light receptors, so rods and cones. Those are the names of the light receptors, although you don't have to worry about that for now. You just have to be aware that they are light receptors, and they are contained within the retina. And receptors are actually most concentrated in the fovea, which is a particular part of the retina. And so that's where you find your highest density of receptors in a particular part of the retina. But apart from that, they are fairly evenly spread out across the retina. And the retina's job is to absorb light energy and transform this into an impulse, which is sent to the brain via the optic nerve. So this is the optic nerve exiting here. So if I were to just label this on the diagram. And that's going to transmit your impulses from your light receptors in your retina to the brain. And so that's just summarising what I just said. And as I just said, the optic nerve sends electrical impulses from the retina to the CNS, enabling an image to be formed in the brain. So it's responsible for transmitting this sensing of light. The sclera is the white coating of the eye, so this part here. And so it's the white coating that you can visibly see, and it's tough, and therefore it protects the eye. So this is an example of an eye component that has a protective function. The pupil is the hole in the eye through which light enters. So this little gap here, light is going to pass straight through that gap, and it will focus onto the retina. So that's just a nice little summary of what we've just seen. So you have your retina where all your light receptors are found, and around that you have the sclera. The optic nerve is transmitting impulses to the CNS, and you have the pupil here, which is this gap through which light passes, gets refracted by the lens, and is placed somewhere onto the retina where the light is detected by a light receptor. So that's just a summary of all of that for you. Oopsie. And now let's take a look at a few more functions of the eye. So we have the iris, which is this part here. And the iris controls the diameter and the size of the pupil. So remember in our last slide, we just said that the pupil is this space through which light rays pass. So your iris actually controls how wide the pupil is. So just to make that clear, I'll just try and draw it on here. So this part, this gap here is your pupil. Okay, I'm pointing to this gap over here. And it's your iris that controls how big your pupil is. So it controls how much light enters the eye. So for example, in dim light, the pupil needs to increase in size, and therefore the iris will therefore allow this to occur, because we need to let more light in order to help us see. And then we have the lens. So we've briefly talked about this, about how it's responsible for refracting light. So the lens is a transparent and biconcave structure. So that just means that it has this nice kind of oval but 3D structure. And it works with the cornea to refract light entering the eye onto the retina. And can you see these little attachments here? Well, they're your suspensory ligaments and your ciliary muscles, and they control how round this lens is, and that's really important in terms of controlling how much we're refracting the light as it enters our eye, and that's got something to do with accommodation, which we're going to come on to look at in a few minutes. So that's your lens. Its key function is refraction. And your cornea is a transparent layer of the eye, which acts as a window to the eye. So the cornea also has some refractive properties, so it bends the light entering the eye before it gets to the lens, which is also important for focusing light on the retina. So the cornea kind of contributes some kind of function to the lens as well. And then your ciliary muscles control the shape of the lens by contracting and relaxing. And this is also really important in the process of accommodation, which we'll be talking about in a little while. So if these muscles, they can contract or relax and therefore change the shape of the lens and therefore change how much light is refracting as it enters the eye. And your suspensory ligaments are what attach the ciliary muscles to the lens, and they also keep the lens in the correct position. So they are really important in controlling refraction by adjusting the shape of the lens too. So there we are, that's another summary there. And I think it would be really, really useful if you drew a diagram of the eye yourself and labelled all of these various structures and their respective functions onto there, as that's just a simple case of learning and really, really easy marks in the exam. So let's just do a little test here. So why don't you pause the video at this point and try and label the eye. So I'm going to go through them. So we've got our cornea, our iris, our pupil, the gap in between which light enters the eye, the lens, really important in refracting light, ciliary muscles and suspensory ligaments, which are important in changing the shape of the lens and therefore changing the extent to which light is refracted as it enters the eye, the optic nerve, it's sending impulses from the sensory receptors in the retina to the CNS, the brain, and your retina, which contains your light receptors, and your sclera, which has a protective function. So I've kind of rattled through the functions there, but just pause the video again and try to write down the functions or say them aloud. Yes, let's do that now. And here we go. Just a really nice, neat summary of all the structures and functions of the eye. And as I said, it will be really useful for you to draw this down in your notes. So now let's take a look at this concept called accommodation, which I've been talking about a little bit. So we've already seen that the lens refracts the light entering the eye so that it can converge onto the retina. And this allows the object to be brought into focus. So accommodation changes the shape of the lens to adjust how much refraction is taking place. And it is actually a reflex action. So let's have a look at how this works. So let's just quickly recap the structure here. So we've got our lens here. These are the ciliary muscles and suspensory ligaments. Your retina is around here, and we can see light coming from a near object in this case, passing, hitting the cornea, getting reflected slightly because it's changing the medium through which it's travelling, and therefore it's being slowed down because it's a denser medium here than outside in this air. That's a bit physicsy, you might have done it in physics, but don't worry too much about how refraction works. All you need to know here is that it causes the light to change direction, and the same occurs when the light passes through the lens. And ultimately we're trying to focus our light rays onto one point in the retina so that our light receptor can then transmit a signal, an electrical impulse down the optic nerve to the brain. So to focus on a near object, the suspensory ligaments relax and the ciliary muscles contract. And this allows the lens to become fatter and more curved. So this is a summary of what I just said, but just to make it clear, we have contraction of our ciliary muscles, which is going to make the muscle shorter, because when a muscle contracts, it gets shorter. And remember, your suspensory ligaments are attaching your ciliary muscles to your lens. So if your muscle is contracting and getting shorter, it's going to allow the suspensory ligaments to relax, and therefore the lens becomes fatter and more curved. And this therefore allows for more refraction of the light rays passing through the lens. And this is really important because it means there's a greater refractive effect, so the light refracts and bends even more. And this is important especially for nearby objects because they have less distance and time to come into focus. And therefore, in general, you just have to learn that nearby objects require increased refractive effect of the lens. And in order to get this increased refractive effect, we've got to get the lens getting fatter and more curved in order to make it more refractive as a structure. So now let's compare this to far objects. So this is just going to be the opposite. So we're going to get the ciliary muscles relaxing, the suspensory ligaments contracting, and the lens becoming thinner and less curved. And because it's thinner, we're now going to get less refraction of the light ray as it passes through the lens. So there's a reduced refractive effect of the lens here, which means that the light is bending less. And this is really important for faraway objects because this way they have more time and a greater distance to come into focus, and therefore a reduced refractive effect of the lens is required. So now let's take a look at some defects of the eye. So accommodation is a very intricate, complex process, but in many individuals it can go wrong, leading to defects such as myopia, which we commonly call short-sightedness, so the ability to see near things, and hyperopia, which we also call long-sightedness, so the ability to see far away objects but not nearby objects. So in these two conditions, myopia and hyperopia, we are basically unable to focus light rays onto a particular point of the retina. So you can see here in myopia, we've got our light rays coming through, they are getting refracted by the lens and therefore they are changing direction. But can you see how they converge before the retina? This is not what we want. This is the situation that we want. We want the light rays all converging on one point of the retina. So in order to correct myopia, we're going to use a concave lens. So the person may be given glasses or contact lenses which have a concave lens, and this is basically going to split the light rays up before they enter your lens, so that your lens then causes your light to converge on the retina, not before the retina. So I'll go through this a little bit slower. So myopia is short-sightedness, which means that people struggle to see faraway objects. So myopia could be due to a thin lens, therefore causing lots of refraction. Alternatively also, the eyeball may be too long, which means that the light rays cross before they reach the end of the eyeball and the retina. So corrective concave lenses can be used, and so they make the incoming light rays diverge, so they move away from each other before they hit the lens, so that the rays end up focusing on the retina. And these lenses can be found in glasses or contact lenses. So, that was just a point saying that long-sightedness means that they can see long distances and not short distances. So you literally have long sight. So that's just a useful way to remember that. And another useful little trick is concave means bending inwards and convex means bending outwards. And so when you are myopic, you're going to need a concave lens. And the way to remember that is when you're myopic, you're moping, and you are sad and cave in. So concave, myopia caving in. Whereas when you are hyperopic, you are hyper and you might get angry and vex. So for hyperopia, we're correcting with a convex lens, but with myopia, we're correcting with a concave lens. So let's just take a look at hyperopia here. So with hyperopia, we are getting light converging after the retina. So that means that the lens is not refracting the light rays enough. And just contrast this to myopia, in which we saw the light converging at a point around here before the retina. But in corrected hyperopia, remember if we're hyper, we might be angry and we might vex. So we're correcting with a convex lens. And what that's going to do is it's going to make the light rays converge a little bit more before they reach the lens, and therefore the lens, whatever the refractive power of the lens is going to be sufficient to make the light converge smack bang on your retina. So just to summarise, hyperopia is long-sightedness, so it's a struggle to see nearby objects, which basically means that there's too little refraction by the lens. So that means that the light rays are still wide apart when they reach the retina, and they would, in a theoretical fashion, be destined to cross at a point behind the retina. So it could be due to a thick lens, whereas myopia is often due to a thin lens. And alternatively, the eyeball may be too short, which means that the light rays do not cross by the time they reach the end of the eyeball. So those are the possible causes of hyperopia. And to correct it, we're going to use our convex lens, because remember, we're angry and we vex when we're hyperopic. And they make the incoming light rays converge before they hit the lens, so that the rays end up focusing on the retina. And lenses are found in your glasses or contact lenses, and like short-sightedness, lenses can be found in both of these things. And people with hyperopia often use glasses for reading, so you might have seen your grandparents, for example, using glasses for reading, but not for general life, because they can see far. It's just seeing close objects like a newspaper that they can't quite do. Whereas myopic people tend to wear glasses the whole time because they can't see near. So, as I said earlier, do draw the diagram of the eye down in your notes, but also these diagrams of hyperopia and myopia, these ones over here, and how you would correct them, and practice drawing them out for the exam, because if you're asked a question on it, then I think that's a really neat way to summarise it alongside your written answer. So let's have a look at some of the treatments for hyperopia and myopia. So glasses can be fitted with either concave to treat myopia or convex to treat hyperopia lenses. Contact lenses are more user-friendly substitutes though, and they can be hard contact lenses which are more durable and resistant, whilst soft contact lenses are more comfortable. Laser surgery alternatively can be used, so this involves using a laser to physically change the shape of the cornea, so therefore change the refractive power of the cornea. It's most commonly used for myopia, but obviously if you're undergoing surgery there's going to be a risk that you can get infection or go blind, although these are pretty rare now. So there is a risk associated with this treatment option, whereas glasses and contact lenses are relatively less risky than that. And the final one will be your replacement lenses. So artificial lenses can also be implanted to replace the existing lens of the person. So this is a long-term alternative to specs or contact lenses, and it involves surgery which requires a cut into the cornea. So this again is going to introduce lots of other risks such as infection risk. And the inserted lens will be of the desirable shape to have the ideal refractive index required, depending on whether the person is long or short-sighted. So those are your 4 common treatment options for hyperopia and myopia. And that's all for today. We covered lots of fiddly bits with all the structures and functions of the eye, and also the difference between myopia and hyperopia. So this is a really good tutorial in which you can go home and take those diagrams that we've drawn here and replicate them in your notes and use that as a kind of way of triggering your memory during the exam. So well done for today, and I'll see you for the next session.
Thanks for watching this free video from StudyMind. If you liked this video, make sure to subscribe to catch our newest videos by clicking below, and leave a comment on a topic you'd like a video on. Click here to watch more videos in our series for GCSE Biology, or visit our website studymind.co.uk for free past paper compilations by topic and specification.